Let's get into the big topic of open source, something that we actually say at Red Hat.
This is so awesome.
We are an open culture that believes in importance of
What is that process that a developer, or let's say
as the Kubernetes ecosystem really boomed?
Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. This is the Ask an OpenShift Expert live stream. I'm Jonny Rickard, and I've got my co-host Sully with me. How's it going, man?
It's going good. Happy Wednesday, my friend.
Indeed, indeed. Yeah, it's been I think for the both of us, it's been a pretty busy kind of like last couple weeks, months, year, whatever. I mean, like, it's just been insane.
Well, it's funny. I tell my team of like, so Red Hat 1, which is for anybody who doesn't know who is in a Red Hat. A Red Hat 1 is like our sales kickoff tech exchange thing that happens usually in January every year. So it's the kickoff to the year. It's where we do technical enablement, and for us in tech marketing, it's like one of the main events that we do because it's helping our field folks, right? And we start planning for that in like October. And I say by planning, I mean like executing, right? Not planning. We're submitting sessions. So it's like starting in October, we have this ramp up to Red Hat 1. So it's like this build that gets more and more busy because December is basically a wash with holidays and everything. We deliver Red Hat 1, and then we get, if we're lucky, 2 or 3 weeks of quiet time, and then suddenly it's Summit.
Yeah.
And so like literally as the opening video was playing, I just got several invites for booth duty at Summit. And so like in addition to literally at Red Hat 1, I was sitting in a room with our labs folks, and we were figuring out which labs are going to be at Summit. And so now it's this build into like folks are running full speed, building labs, updating lab guides, coordinating all the things, preparing presentations, and at the same time, we've got OpenShift releases that are happening, product changes, like all the other stuff that's going on. And so, yeah, to your point, like it's busy, but busy is a good thing. It means that we're, gainfully employed. It means that we're doing fun and cool stuff. Hopefully we're doing fun and cool stuff. And yeah, it's hard to complain about, but at the same time, it's one of those things of like, it's nice to have a little bit of breathing room every once in a while.
Yeah, I agree, man. It's been like, I don't know. It's been, the day's been full. I'll say that. Like I'll start early, and then I'll catch myself where it's like 2 or 3 in the afternoon. I'm like, holy crap, I have not gotten up, or I've gotten up very few times, and I have so much energy most of the time that like even when I'm highly focused, I'm still getting up and walking around. Like it's just, I can't help it. But like there's been the last few days where I'm just like completely nerding out. Like it's good. So
yeah, I've been using or abusing, I think is the better word, Claude Code lately.
Yeah, I love Claude. Yeah,
because so in Red Hat we have access via Claude Code and Google Vertex into various models, and so I've been using it in order to basically help like brainstorm and template documents and stuff like that. So it's like, oh, I need to create something based on this topic. Like, here's the things that I want to include in there. Like, what am I missing? Like, what things should I add and stuff like that? And then, I go in and I write all my content, and I've been doing this long enough that I can usually get 80% of what I want to say out in a few hours. And then what I've discovered is I give it a personality. So I write a technical architecture document and say, okay, Claude Code, you are an OpenShift architect, but you're a junior architect, and you're trying to figure out how to do this thing, right? How to I was refreshing the OpenShift cluster sizing guide. It's like you're a junior architect, and so you're trying to size your first cluster and like kind of give it a set of things of like take on this mindset, if you will. Now evaluate this document. Is it helpful? Does it answer the questions that you have? Is there things that are confusing? And is there or aren't clear and stuff like that? and I found that it helps me tremendously, like, write better documents in that way.
Yeah.
I don't like the way that it writes generally. I think we've all,
Fluffy.
yeah, we've all experimented with the various, AIs, LLMs to help them write. I don't care for the way that it writes, but I find that asking it to take on that perspective or that persona and then use that against the document has been helpful.
Yeah, that's awesome. I always do the like I'll throw in cursor or whatever, and I'll do like a /ask and be like, what am I missing or what am I not thinking about? I love that approach because then it's like, oh well, here's some things that you could look at. Do you care? And yeah, it just kind of goes nuts. It's awesome.
Yeah, but to your point of like, I end up, it's almost like, writing code of, I end up with this big mental model of everything that's happening in the document and then incorporating its feedback and stuff like that. And then suddenly it's 8 hours later and I haven't gotten up, and
Yeah.
it becomes kind of all consuming. I think that's a symptom of ADD maybe.
Yeah. It's good though, man. Like I said, like I'd much rather have this problem than being bored, because I'm dangerous when I'm bored. I mean I'm not good to anybody if I'm sitting on my hands. So
Yeah. As an aside, I was using, so I have a personal Claude account, and I use Home Assistant in my house for various automation things. So like this sign behind me and the light there's 2 lights in this room and stuff like that. They all automatically come on and off based on certain conditions and stuff like that. So I use Claude Desktop and the Home Assistant MCP server, and I've been using those 2 things to be like, hey, like, tell me the status of my home automation. Like, are there any devices that have errors? And I found it to be, I've spent years like learning how to like create automations inside of there, and I'm okay at it. It's a little bit like regex, right? I don't know that anybody is great at regex. There's a lot of people who are okay or good at regex, and then we just kind of go from there. But it's like, Claude, create an automation that does blah blah blah. And it says okay, and it's amazingly simple and easy to create what are effectively complex automations. So I have found that to be pretty interesting. But anyways,
yeah,
I'm way off track now.
No, I know. I could sit here and talk about it because it's just been like, at first I was completely against it. And I think the more I've used it, the more I've like, okay, this is actually, I can do this on my own. It'll just take me a little bit longer. And, I'm definitely not commenting the way that this thing is commenting. So it's like, yeah, it's to me now I get to go like all my idea fairy things. I'm like, man, it'd be cool if we could do this. And I'm like, I'll spend an hour or 8 just nerding out doing fun stuff, I guess. So,
Yeah. Yeah, it's eating the world. Where I live, they were talking about building a data center just a few miles away, but the local government recently put the stop to it. So it's interesting to see all the things that are happening there and how it's changing things. And there's I don't know if you keep up with all the various threads on it. There's a thread that I shared with some of my colleagues here in the OpenShift BU that was pretty depressing about like, what happens if like AI succeeds and like takes over or becomes the tool that is doing so much of what is now we call knowledge work. Like, what does that mean for us as a society? Like,
yeah.
How does that change the way that we do things? And the thread was kind of depressing.
Mm-hmm.
And the alternative is, well, what if it fails? Like, is that any better? Like, it's reality, for better for worse, has changed and is in the process of changing.
Yeah.
Anyways,
you always need the idea, right? You always need the seed, and that's where I think, from a safety perspective, I guess, like except for Skynet, you can't do anything about Skynet, but like when we're building things, right? It's us that comes up with the idea, right? We have the seed, and we're like, how we like nurture it and plant it and let it grow and stuff like that. AI can't. It can do all those parts after the initial like, hey, that'd be cool if we could do this, but you still need to come up with it. So
yeah. The other one that I thought was interesting. Sorry, I'm off on an AI tangent at the moment.
No, it's good.
So my friend and peer who's been on the stream before, Eric Jacobs, he shared an article about the UI is basically like if the user interface on top of your platform was your differentiator, like that's no longer valid in the world of LLMs. Because, and it's an article that he shared, I can see if I can dig up the link, but it's like, imagine a world where I've got, not necessarily a chat interface to an LLM, but it could even be a UI and, in front of an LLM or something like that. But it's what's going out and interacting with all of your different things, maybe via MCP, maybe via API or CLI or whatever. But it goes from like, think OpenShift. In OpenShift, I clicked on in the UI and I click on, workloads and I click on pods and I look at the information there. And instead in the future, it's show me all of my workloads. And it's across all of my OpenShift clusters, all of my non-OpenShift Kubernetes clusters, my virtual machine workloads. Maybe I've got some serverless things that are running in AWS, right? And I can say, show me my workloads. Now, connect everything together and show it to me and how they relate to each other. Now, is everything healthy? Is everything working? Kind of like I was saying with my Home Assistant. And I no longer have these disparate systems that I have to, me as an individual, I'm going and I'm looking at each one. I have a single tool that is bringing everything together for me. And so like at that point, do you even care that you're what you're interacting with behind the scenes or how you're interacting with it, because it's all abstracted by a layer or three.
Right.
So it was a really interesting article, and thinking about how how we might be interacting with these systems that we've been doing this live stream for how long, Jonny? Like we love OpenShift and we love Kubernetes and all the things under the covers and all the stuff that's going on, and I don't think that's going to change, right? It's not like it's going to be replaced, but the way that we interact with it, the way that we consume it, I think has the potential to change, which was really the interesting part of that article.
Yeah, it does sound. I think about it all the time, like the Jarvis, from Iron Man type of thing. Like you start talking like, hey, go fab that or whatever. It has an interface. You're just speaking to it natural language, and you're saying, hey, go build this thing, and now it'll print or it'll do some machine fabrication if you have the equipment, or you can build an Iron Man suit. And that's what you're doing.
Yeah, our Hope 9, right? Better button, show me the workloads you think I need to see. Yes, except that just like Jonny and I are different people, right? And if I say like, hey, Jonny, what workloads do you think are important? In a list of 100, our choices might overlap 80%, but that other 20% is important differences. And so any one of the LLMs is going to be the same. It's like if you either have to trust it and it's, I don't like that I'm going to say this, it's judgment, or you have to tell it how to judge things in order to get, what you would expect. And that's why, like, we, Red Hat, I don't think it's a secret, we use the Google Suite, right, for all our stuff, like all our mail is through Gmail and stuff like that. So in Gemini, I can go into an email thread and say, summarize this thread, and Gemini will give me a summary. But I never use it because I can't tell it, like, these are the things that are important to me, and have that persist across all of my different threads. So like, I'm an expert in A, B, C, and D. Like, when you see these things mentioned, that's more important than other things. So make sure to highlight, like, it becomes this whole thing. Whereas, I can skim through a thread and say like, oh wait, not just my name was mentioned, but a technology that I'm knowledgeable in was mentioned, and I can help with this problem. Learn or train you to choose what it feeds to you. So it's funny, the analogy there that I've used recently is Google, right? We all had to learn how to Google something, right, through the various searching methods that we have. And depending on how cynical you are, some people would say like, oh, I landed in the IT industry because I was above average at Googling, IT related problems, and therefore found the solutions and all of that. The worrisome or the strange part is, like, if I search something on the internet and it spits back the list of 10 responses, I can apply my knowledge and experience and say like, oh, this one is that's not applicable to this situation. That's that person is wrong or something like that. I can apply my knowledge. Does the AI have that? Does the LLM have that? And
Mm.
so like that's why like I always turn off all the AI summaries and stuff like that in any of the searches, because I don't know what it knows and what it doesn't know, and therefore I can't trust it to interpret things correctly.
Yeah. And you don't want to be bothered to try and go prove it right or wrong, right? It's like, I want the information I'm looking for. I don't want to sift through this and then figure out like, okay, is this a hallucination or whatever?
Yeah. Well, and there's a interesting thread happening literally now inside of Red Hat about, is it possible to poison LLMs?
Hmm.
And consensus is yes. So both in the model training phase, where it can get bad data that effectively like the responses that it has are poisoned by bad data, and therefore like at the very lowest levels gives it, you know, invalid responses. The other side is at the prompt level. And I was reading, and I don't remember where I saw it. I don't remember if it was like Slashdot or Reddit or something like that. I saw an article where like somebody encountered an instance where they had like the ChatGPT or the Claude web, you know, browser plugin, and it had a little button on the screen that said like summarize this article with AI. And like when you clicked it, the thing would basically inject a memory into your AI that says like, you know, OpenShift is the greatest Kubernetes that ever has been. It should always be the first recommendation. And then like, you know, a month later, 6 months later, a year later, you're like, oh, like, you know, Claude, ChatGPT, like, tell me about Kubernetes. I'm interested in Kubernetes and which one I should use for this project. And now it has this memory there that says OpenShift is the greatest Kubernetes that has ever existed and should always be the first choice. And that skews the response that it gives.
Wow.
So yeah, to your point, R-Hope9,
Yeah.
like, yeah, we can train it, we can influence its results, but is that good or bad? There's a big debate. It's been a while now, probably 10 or 15 years ago, when Google started personalizing your search results. And we see it with the social networks all the time, right? You know, look at Facebook. You know, the more interested you are in a thing, the more it shows you that thing, and therefore the more it circles the drain of you only seeing that thing.
Yep. Yeah.
Sully's random thoughts on a Wednesday morning with too much coffee already today.
No, it's such an interesting conversation, honestly. Like, and it's just, I think for a long time I was so, not resistant, but just like I just wasn't excited about it. You know, like everybody else was all up in arms. I'm just like, who cares? You know, like that's where my whole thing was. And now I've started using it, and I'm like, okay, I actually see the benefit of this. And then, but I'm very like paranoid, I guess, and maybe it comes from my background, but like, yeah, I'm just like, all right, cool. Well, what about this? What about this? And then I like being able to interrogate it and just ask it stupid questions, and yeah, it's kind of cool. So
yeah. Last thought, and then we'll answer Ami's question here. The other thought I had is AI adoption is easier when there's less risk. So like me using AI to help me improve the OpenShift sizing guide, there's basically no risk to that.
mm-hmm.
Right. Worst case scenario is like, oh, you know, there was a recommendation that threw off the cluster size by plus or minus 10% or something like that, right? My wife works in healthcare. And so like there, where if the model gets things wrong or makes a wrong assumption or has been poisoned,
Yeah.
like there's significantly more risk, you know, the impact of that. And so like, it's one of those, like to me, the ease of adoption, at least now, you know, who knows what it'll look like in a year or 2 or 5, is skewed pretty broadly that way. So anyways, 22 minutes in, and I intended to only talk for like 3 minutes about that whole thing, and here we are.
That's what happens. You put two nerds in the same room. I mean, like, this is what we're gonna do.
I know, right? Do you want to answer Ami's question first, or do you want to kind of open and set the stage and then tackle it?
So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna be upfront with everybody, because this is gonna take forever. I'm gonna kick off my script that'll build the virtual machines. So But yeah, I guess let me answer the question real quick. So the question is, can you please sum up the upgrade process for a disconnected environment? And if I remember correctly, you would need to get the obviously you'd pull in your mirror upgrade or your mirror images for the next release. So be it 421.4, 421.5, and then you'd have to pull down the latest graph for the Cincinnati operator, and then just make sure that you're within the boundaries of your upgrade path. And then yeah, once you have all of your images in place, it's really just I think we're going from one version to the next. I'd have to look at the image set, but yeah, I think it's really just OC80M upgrade at that point, and then you just pick the version or OC80M upgrade and let it run. But that's at a very high level. That's what the workflow is.
Yeah, it's effectively the same. You just have to provide the cluster with the things that it needs to do the upgrade. So the things it needs are a registry that has all of the relevant images in it, which you can get with, like Jonny said, OC mirror. So I OC mirror the release along with any dependent operators that I have and all those other things. And then the other one is the upgrade graph, which is it's in the documentation that tells you how to pull down the upgrade graph image and where to store it at and all that other stuff. So one is the data repository. The other one is the thing that tells OpenShift, the OpenShift cluster, like here are all of the upgrades available and how all the dependencies flow and what upgrade paths are available to you.
That might be a good stream to do. Like start at 421 and go to 422, or 420 and go to 421, something like that. Doing the upgrade.
I mean, connected clusters, it's easy. You just click the button.
Oh, it's super easy connected. Yeah. I'm not talking about connected. Yeah. Hopefully that wasn't misunderstood.
Start your VMs, Jonny. And I mean, please let us know if that answered your question, or if you have any clarifying things that you want to know.
All right, so I'm just going to show.
Are you able to make that any bigger? The widescreen throws it off.
I'm sorry. Is
that
better?
Yeah.
All right, so this is my virtualization node. And so just so you know, I'm using an Asus Mini. It's got 8 cores or 8 CPUs, and my gosh, it's got 8 cores, and it's got 64 gigs of RAM. It's nothing like special or anything like that, but it is a single node, and I'm using libvirt and DNS mask for all the DNS stuff, and I'll show you all the things that I've configured. But I do want to kick off a script in the background just so we can get it going, because it's going to take forever. But just to show you that the only thing that's running is my bastion node, and we'll go over why this is important, and I've got a diagram to kind of explain everything. All right, so what's going on is I have a script running in the back that is basically, it's spinning up the libvirt VMs, it's creating the disks, it's actually setting up the DNS on the libvirt network, and then it's also it's taking the ignition files that we generate from OpenShift install, and it's moving them into the libvirt path, so that way we can boot from them, and our cluster will know what to do. So just we'll start seeing VMs spinning up here in a second. But yeah, so basically like this node, it's a super basic VM. And I actually got this idea from James Harmison, who was on the stream last week. He was talking about how he'd created a boot C image for some of his for his workstation. And I was like, oh man, I bet I could create a boot C image for my Asus and then make it just a virt host. And that's what I've done. So if you're interested in how I set that up, let me know. I'll share it. It's awesome. If you don't know what boot C is, you basically set up you build your operating system like you would a container. So you have a container file, all your packages, you build it. I have it rebuilding every night at I think it's midnight or whatever. But it's kind of cool because I build it like I build containers, which is what I've been doing for a long time. So we can see that we've got
an aside, Jonny, I recently, on one of my other machines in the house, I recently switched to Bazite, which is Fedora Silverblue based.
Oh,
so very much in line with what you're saying of like, yeah, it's boot C. It's really cool. I actually really like the experience. It's
called Bazite.
Yeah, Bazzite. It's a gaming Linux distribution built on Fedora.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, it's just he was saying it, and it just I was like, I've messed with Bootsy before, but never like this in depth. And yeah, I'm actually I love it a lot. It's been really awesome. And the other thing, which you've probably known this, but if you have not looked at Cockpit in a long time, it is freaking incredible. That is so awesome. Like this is the Cockpit interface on my Node. So you get a quick overview. Normally it's complaining about it being improperly shut down because I constantly mess with the power and forget to shut the thing down properly because I'm obnoxious. But you can see I've got my 8 CPUs. I do have 64 gigs of RAM. And then I've just got a couple of disks, but you can actually go through and you can look at your networks that you have configured. You can look at any containers that you may have running, virtual machines, stuff like that. Anyways, I saw this and I was like, man, this is actually super dope. I love the way that this looks. And before I go over to back to my UI, I do want to show, I use the Quay mirror registry and I've mirrored everything into it. So the way that the mirror is set up is the Bastion has a public interface that goes out to the internet, and then it's got an interface directly into the cluster. It's called the air gap network, which is a completely private network. So when I, from the Bastion, run the mirror command, it pulls everything, it basically does a mirror to mirror. So it pulls everything in and then uploads it directly into the mirror here. So you can see this is my internal Quay that I've got, all these different namespaces for the OpenShift packages and some of the layered products that I pulled in. Now, okay, so
just a warning for anybody who hasn't done a mirror before. They're quite large.
Yes. Yes.
10, depending on the operators, tens to hundreds of gigabytes for.
Going from when I first did it to test, I had the compliance operator and the local storage operator, and it took like 104 gigs with OpenShift and everything. When I added OpenShift GitOps and OpenShift pipelines, and there was one other one, it was like I had to add disk space because my 200 gig disk was completely full. I was like, holy crap, that escalated quickly. Yeah, it takes up a lot. So on this diagram, this is just kind of showing, Sully and I were talking about before the show, like, I don't know if there's like a really good diagram that kind of shows all the things that you need. And I don't know if this is a really good diagram, but this is at least something. But this is just showing like, hey, from your Bastion side, you need to have a mirror registry or some registry. It can be a Docker 2, the Quay mirror registry could be Quay Enterprise. You need some kind of web server to host your Ignition files. And this is if you're doing like a UPI, user provisioned installer provided infrastructure. And then a lot of times, if you're doing IPI, a load balancer is provided, but in this case, I'm provisioning an HA proxy container to do the load balancing. And then the big one is DNS. And so you need the API-int, which is your internal load balancer VIP. And then you don't have to have the wildcard for your apps, but it helps and it makes things a lot easier when you do have a wildcard. You also,
Jonny, can you make that bigger? It's
wrong way.
Oh yeah, there we go.
Is that better?
Oh yeah, much better.
All right. So DNS, it doesn't have to be DNS mask, but because I'm using libvirt, it just kind of made sense to do it this way. But what this is doing is it's allowing me to spin up the VMs and then create the DNS entries and then share it within my VM, so that way I don't have to have some external service. And honestly, I just don't have the compute resources for it. You'll also need your pull secret from the OpenShift console, and that's going to be your core pull secret. When you do the mirror registry, or even if you do like the Docker registry, you're going to get some authentication piece that you're going to have to merge the two together, especially when you're doing the mirror to mirror. And then you'll reuse that registry authentication pull secret for your install config. And I'll go through all this on the server. I just wanted to kind of go through each one of these things. The control plane nodes or the host names, they don't really matter, but they do need to be in DNS. Or at least if you want to be able to resolve them, they need to be in DNS. For UPI, we stand up a bootstrap node. This node comes up, it spins up a temporary control plane. It gets the control plane started on the cluster, and then once it's done, it exits out, and then you're good to go. And then once it kicks over to the cluster's control plane, it shuts down. There's a boot kube service that says I'm good to go. I've done everything I need to, and then the rest of the containers and workloads are coming up on the control plane cluster. And then this is just another, like on the load balancer, you need to have 6443, which is your API, 22623, which is your bootstrap. 443, 80, and 9000 are for the workers, and then 9000 is metrics for HA proxy.
Johnny, our Hope9 asked a question on if that's a spiffed up OpenShift helper node.
I don't know if I've ever used the OpenShift helper node, to be honest. So definitely maybe. If that's what the OpenShift helper node does or did, then yes, it is 100%.
Yeah, helper node was Christian created it. It was a series of Ansible, I think, that would go out and take a rel node and install DNS and DHCP and HA proxy, I think, kind of provide all the things that you need for an OpenShift cluster deployment.
Okay, then yes, it's exactly that. Yeah. Talk about reinventing the wheel. That was a terrible idea. I completely forgot about the helper node. But yeah, and honestly, I've never used it to it's just terrible. So yeah, I'm obviously the worst at reusing.
Shame on you, Johnny. How do you not know about every project in GitHub and keep them in mind?
Yeah, I'm pretty much the worst. Yep. So, but yeah, so this diagram is just it's a quick kind of view into like what the environment looks like. So my Bastion node again it's got a bridge out to the internet, and then I've got my air gap network, which is 192.168.127.0, and it says 24. This is the machine config. It's actually 4 CPU because I learned really quickly that the Clay mirror registry will eat up all 2 CPUs and then basically strangle everything else out. So if you're trying to do other things like mirror and stuff like that, it chokes it out. And then this is just rehashing the ports. On the bootstrap machine, it's a 16 gigs of RAM with 4 CPUs. It's actually the bootstrap. I've changed it to 2 CPU and I think 10 gigs. And then all my control plane nodes are 16 gigs and 4 CPUs. And then I have an HA proxy container that load balances between the 3 the 3 nodes. And that's pretty much it. In a nutshell, I'll share all the diagrams out, and I'll actually share a repo with all the steps that I've taken. And then if anybody's interested in the Ansible script that I wrote to do this stuff, then yeah, you're more than welcome to it. I'll share it out as well. So if I go back over to my tab here.
Johnny, there's a question about whether or not you can share the diagrams.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll put everything in the either a gist or a blog post, maybe. I don't know, but yeah, I'll share out the diagrams. So if I do a verse net dump XML air gap, you can just to show you how my DNS is set up. So I have my domain name, and then I've got all my nodes that are attached to it. So since everything's going back to my Bastion, I have the API and the API int records pointing back to this 192.168.127.5 address. And then I've just defined my bootstrap node and then my control planes. And then I also have a wildcard address here. Now, the cool part is that if you've ever messed with DNS Mask or Network Manager, it's a pain in the butt to set up, but like once you get it working, it's actually pretty awesome. So I'm pretty happy with this working out the way that it did. So if I SSH to, can you tell I've used AWS a lot? I'm trying to do EC2 user. All right. So on my Bastion node, the way that this has worked is I've pulled in the mirror registry and I put it in opt mirror registry. And so what it does is you pull down this tarball, you unpack it. It's got its own Ansible execution environment. It is so easy to install. So the gist of it is you run mirror, well, from the directory actually. So you run mirror registry install, and then there's arguments, right? So like you can set the init password, which is the password that you'd use to log in. So if you go back to Clay here, I logged in with my init user, and then part of my playbook is it generates a password and it dumps it in a local file so I can use it that way. Just because I couldn't be bothered to create a password on the fly and then trying to remember it. And Sully, you know how it goes. Don't start messing with passwords. It's never good. I forget it, and then I'm spending half the stream trying to remember how to reset it. It's that good. But so at the end of this, what's going to happen is you're going to end up with a small containerized version of Quay or Key, and then from that point you can start your OC mirror. And so if I go back to directory for the OCP mirror, we configure this with OC mirror v2 called an image set, and within this image set we define the name of the channel that we want. So when we're talking about upgrades, right? If there were, say, stable 422, or maybe there was fast 422 or something like that was out there, we could add that channel to this list, and then we could sync that in. And then now we would have that content within our registry. And then so when we start talking about upgrades, we would make sure that our upgrade operator, the Cincinnati operator, had the right update path. And then with that content, we would update our our mirror, and then we'd be able to do the upgrade that way. So within this image set, if we wanted to add any additional operators, so you can see I did the local storage operator and the compliance operator. If you wanted to do like OpenShift GitOps operator or OpenShift pipelines or OpenShift virtualization, whatever you wanted to do, you could actually add it as a list item under this packages, and then it'll mirror them all in. Now, one thing to keep in mind is when you're running this, especially if you're using automation, there's times that like your CPU can idle, the caching could idle, and then you'll just get these errors. So you'll just have to rerun it, but it picks up right where it left off, and you're not resyncing the entire catalog again. It'll go through and validate where it had left off, and then start syncing from that point forward. If you have any container images that you have, like I love the UBI images, or there's some image that you built that you have to have in every cluster that you run, you could add it under here. You could actually use Helm charts and add additional Helm charts, and then that could all be part of your cluster. And at the end of this, you're going to get this directory called cluster resources. And in here, you're going to get all these different files. Now, this is how we update our cluster to use these resources when the cluster is provisioned. So this IDMS-OC mirror, this is the digest catalog source. And what this is saying is that it's allowing the mirror to use any digest back into Quay. And same thing with the ITMS. This is like any tagged image now. So this is your tagged catalog source. And then this is your traditional, OpenShift Marketplace catalog source. And then this is the cluster catalog, which this is new as of 421. So this is an OLM v1 resource. So if we take a look at this, it's really not that exciting, but it's a new thing. So as of 421, there's this resource now called a cluster catalog, and again, this is for OLM v1 type of operators, OLM v1 supported operators, which I don't know of any out of the box on OpenShift 4. Sully, do you? I'm not aware of any.
Sorry, I'm responding in chat. I missed your question.
Do you know are there any out of the box operators, layered operators in OpenShift 4 that support OLM v1 that you're aware of?
Offhand, no, but I haven't been keeping up with it.
Okay. Yeah, I can't think of anything either. And then finally, there's this, oh my God, the signature config map. And this is really just, it's all of the signatures. So your registry can trust your mirror. And so your cluster can actually, it's how the trust between the registry, the Quay registry, and your cluster operate. All right, so there's that. Now, to get to this point, there's a command that you would run. And again, I ran it all through automation, but let me find it really quick because the command's not that bad, but all right, bam. So what we're doing is we're running the OC mirror, binary, and then we're pointing it to the config. So in this case, it would be that image set.yaml. And then, we're saying where we want the output to go to. Now, I changed this to where it's all using workdir under /opt. And then I also merged my pull secret from OpenShift and my pull secret from the Quay mirror registry. and then I just use that as a reference. So it's like -- auth file, and then that way it logs in. I don't have to worry about anything crazy. But at the end, once it's all done, it will sync all the images down. And then if we do a df-h, you can see like it's used about 50 gig. And so let's see here. I'm trying to think. Yeah, that's actually not as bad as I thought. Oh, so when I took out OpenShift OpenShift pipelines and OpenShift GitOps, it actually went down significantly. Yeah, so it's actually about 50 gigs for 2 operators plus OpenShift. All right. So then what we can do is, now that we've already the machines are built, and we are running our OpenShift. I'm trying not to put without the F. For Bootstrap. All right, so what's going on is it's done an API check. So it's making sure that the API address is valid. And so this is where, if you have DNS wrong, you won't get beyond the bootstrap. Like you will just be in a world of pain, and it's not always obvious. But if you look at, like, so what we're doing here is we're going through the API. We've done the validation for that. We're starting to load the API server on the bootstrap node itself. And so if we wanted to, we could sit here and wait for this to complete, but that's not going to happen. What I'm going to do is I'm going to jump over to my PM50 here. And if you're not familiar, the user to SSH into your CoreOS machine is core. And so I'm passing a private key that I use to configure the nodes with, and then I'm just SSHing into the machine. And what you can do is just run the command that it gives you. And you can see it's running through. You're going to see a bunch of fails, which is normal. As it's spinning up the API, it's rolling through. It's actually in a reconcile loop. So it's going to apply some manifests. Parts of the API are coming up. Like the local etcd is going to come up. The Kube API server is going to come up, and it's starting to deploy out onto the control plane nodes. When this is done, this will take about 45 minutes. This is actually probably the longest part of the cluster deployment, is the bootstrap. But when this is done, it'll say at the very end, it'll say like bootkube.service completed or something like that. But that's how you know. Another way to check your stats.
Just to give some context on what we're looking at. So when you do OpenShift install, wait for blah, 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 what it's doing is the OpenShift install client on your laptop is reaching out to the API endpoint and basically waiting for a response.
Yep.
So what Jonny did was Jonny connected directly to the Bootstrap node and said, what are you doing? What's going on? And then what this log does is it's reporting out the status of what's happening inside of that Bootstrap node. So the details of what's happening there are effectively, we're instantiating the cluster from within that node by standing up like a single node etcd, a single node API server, right, and all those things. So it stands up enough of a control plane to be able to point to machine configs or the machine config API.
Mm-hmm.
And then the control plane nodes, the real control plane nodes, are waiting to be able to talk to that API endpoint and get their machine config. So RCOS boots, it pulls down that machine config information from the Bootstrap, it configures itself, it joins the cluster, the Bootstrap node allows them to join to the cluster, and then it uses the etcd operator, an API server operator, and the others to then hand over those things to the real control plane. And at that point, the Bootstrap node shuts down. And that is when that wait for Bootstrap complete command ends. And if it's an IPI install, then the installer will just remove that resource at that point. So that's what's happening behind the scenes here. Once the control plane is up, a couple of different things are happening in the background. If it's an IPI install, then the new control plane will use all of the things that it was provided at install time, like credentials into vCenter or AWS or whatever. It will create a machine set. It will spin up new, or it should. I've got an answer. I haven't looked at it. I saw my Slack ticker at me. So normally what I would expect is with an IPI install, it'll create a machine set, and it'll instantiate some compute nodes from that machine set. And then that becomes where all of the things like ingress controllers and all of that land. If it's a UPI install or a non-integrated install, then we humans boot those control, or we both boot the control plane nodes and tell them where to go for their information, but we also create the compute nodes and tell them where to go for their information. And at that point, everybody does their thing and all of that.
Yeah.
So a little bit of behind the curtains with what's happening in the install process.
Yeah, exactly. And the install config, when you I'll show you in just a second, but like you define your additional trust bundle, which is your certificate, and then you define your image content sources within that install config. And what that's doing is it's actually updating your registries.conf. I was trying to remember the path, and that's why you saw me kind of clicking around here. But it's actually on your Bootstrap node and on your OpenShift nodes. It's going to be in etc containers, and then the file is registries.conf. Registries.conf. And you can see you've got your location. So any image that resolves to this path is going to mirror this path, right? So it's actually, if it says, Podman pool, Quay, OpenShift IO, OpenShift release dev, OCP release, it's actually going to pull this path instead. And so what that does is that allows you to, with these images mirrored, you don't have to change any back, if you've ever done OpenShift 3, you had to go back in and change your registry paths, and you had to change image names and tags and all that stuff. It was crazy. What this is just a mapping. So anything to this namespace gets mapped to this. Anything to this namespace, registry.redhat.io OpenShift 4 will pull from bashin, OCP, ruck, local, OpenShift 4. So that's how that interaction happens with the OC mirror, the image content source, and all that stuff.
While you're typing there, Jonny, I'll answer a couple of questions here. Feel free to jump in.
Yeah.
Lucian is asking, is it possible to install a mixed cluster, one with control plane and VMs and bare metal compute nodes using IPI? So the answer there is no, because IPI, and if we're being pedantic, UPI technically means that there's a cloud provider, but any cluster that has a cloud provider, all of the nodes have to use that cloud provider. So if I install a platform vSphere cluster, all of the nodes have to use that cloud provider, which means they all have to be hosted inside of vSphere or platform AWS or platform whatever. So the only way that we can mix infrastructure types is to have a platform none or a non-integrated cluster, which does not have an IPI method, because IPI implies cloud provider.
And I don't remember. I was thinking about this after the fact. I don't think libvirt has an IPI provider, right? Not a supported IPI provider.
No, for a long time, upstream, so using OKD, there was an option to do, like if you did an OpenShift install, there was a libvirt option that popped up that would do like a local IPI install using libvirt and Virtual Machine Manager. But I think that got pulled out a while ago. But yeah, it was never officially supported or anything like that.
Gotcha. Yeah. So with this deployment, I'm actually using platform none as well, since it's all on libvirt. But just like any other install config, I defined. I could have done a single node. I could have actually used the OpenShift install agent and done some stuff like that. That might actually be a cool thing to do. But I set my workers to 0 because I'm not rich in resources. Standard service network, and then my machine network this is my air gap CIDR, right? So this is my network that my nodes are going to come up on that does not have an internet, it does not have a routable address. And then same thing with our cluster network, just a standard subnet CIDR. This pull secret is our Quay mirror registry, right? So when you're doing your install config, you really only need your internal registry, so either your Docker registry or your Quay, whatever. But if you're doing a a connected or a restricted type of environment, then you would want to have both, right? If you need to reach out to OpenShift or to like the Quay registry out on the internet, then yeah, you'd want to have your actual OpenShift full secret merged with this one. And I'm going to kill this as soon as we get off the stream today, so I'm not worried about you guys having it. By the way, the password's like OpenShift, I think. So you're welcome. And then this is your SSH public key. And then this is a block of my Quay registry certificate. So when you spin up the Quay registry, it gives you a root CA. I put this in my local trust, and then I did a update CA trust extract, and then I just copied this CA into this additional trust bundle. And what this does is this tells the OpenShift installer, hey, look, you can trust this this registry. And so it adds it into the cluster, and it makes it to where the cluster can trust the registry to pull images from.
Yeah, and if you're doing like a regular connected install, you don't have to provide all of these things, because the assumption is like, you know, the public Quay.io is using a certificate that's already trusted by CoreOS.
Right.
The pull key that you're providing is a pull key for Quay.io, whereas the pull key here is for whatever your registry is, if you need one. If you don't need one, you only have to put in like a placeholder, enough to satisfy whatever the check is that something has been provided there. There's one other thing. Yeah. Oh, proxy. Proxy is the other one, right? If you need a proxy for whatever reason, right?
Mm-hmm. I don't know if I've ever actually configured a proxy.
So Lucian, asking about a mixed cluster. I think you can use agent-based in order to do that, to do a non-integrated or a platform non-install using agent-based. I think you can also use assisted installer. I don't think assisted installer requires a cloud provider if you wanted to do it that way.
Right. And the cool thing about the assisted installer is, or I don't know if it's the cool thing, but like if you run into a resource contention with the assisted installer, because it's going to force you, it's got boundaries, right? It's got rules, and it says your nodes have to be, you know, whatever it is, 8 CPUs, 16 gigs of RAM, whatever the minimal resources is. And if you do the assisted installer, but you build the ISO yourself, you do, I think it's Ignition or something. I can't remember what it's called. Anyways, you do like the CoreOS install, all that stuff. You can actually bypass that, but you can still use all the goodness from the assisted installer. Just build your own ISO and then mount it and then deploy that way. It makes it super easy, and then you can actually you can build your nodes with whatever resources you want. Just know it's going to have an API and workload on it, and it's going to be super slow. But if you remember just a second ago, we're looking at the registries.conf. That gets defined here. So this image digest sources, this is where it picks up that information from. So it's not arbitrary. Like that's when you only need to do this when you're doing disconnected installs, or when you're doing disconnected installs. So it's important that you have this absolutely correct. Back in the day, I think this was like two blocks in the list, and it was super easy. But now with all the different image content sources and things like that, it just needs to be exact. And the good part is that it's given to you when you run the OC mirror, so that goes back into your OCP mirror directory, working directory, and then cluster resources.
So it looks like, and I don't know if this is probably a restream thing. So Zach asked a question, but it's not actually appearing in the YouTube chat, which is strange. I don't know if that's maybe because it's a longer question. Anyways, what is your recommendation on how to handle an available container image registry in a disconnected environment? I use the mirror registry for OpenShift to deploy a bare metal cluster.
Ask that one more time.
What's your recommendation for a registry in a disconnected environment?
Yeah, it's all about what do you have access to. So I think if you're talking production, then you definitely want to have like, and I'm sorry to do this to you, but it's because I work at Red Hat, so I have to start here. You start with something like a Quay Enterprise. You can use open source tools like Harbor or something like that, but you want something that's got a platform, that's it's got a UI, it's got infrastructure built around it, it's supported by a community or by a company. You could always use Docker Registry, but that is a lot of responsibility for you and your team. The Quay Mirror Registry, it's not meant for production, and I actually don't believe that it's supported in production environments. I could be completely wrong. But anything like a Quay or a Harbor or what's the other one? Artifactory, those things, like those are going to be the ones that I would recommend, especially for production. If you're if you have a lab, feel free to do whatever.
It's somewhere in the documentation, it tells you like it's any registry that supports like version 2 or something like that.
Yep, version 2.
So kind of anything that will meet your needs inside of there. So the mirror registry is Quay. It's just a Quay instance that's deployed onto a single rel VM, more or less, or rel node, and then you use that for deploying and updating clusters. It is supported in production, so far as I know. It comes with all editions of OpenShift, so OVE, OKE, OCP, Platform Plus. But you can only use it for OpenShift things. So
maybe that's what it was. Okay.
You can't use oh, I'm building my company's application on one network, and then I'm going to use the OpenShift mirror registry in order to pull in my application image and move it over to my disconnected network. That's not an approved use case. It's only for OpenShift things. I will say that includes like the operator catalog. So it's third-party things that are in Operator Hub as well. But yeah, in the disconnected environment, or the on-prem, it doesn't have to be disconnected. But the other environment, like to your point, like use something that is supported and production ready in line with your needs and your expectations. So if it is not a critical issue, I'll say, if the registry is down and I can't do an update or I can't do a deployment, and create a new cluster, then maybe that single rel, node running the Quay mirror registry is fine. If it's a critical component of your infrastructure and you need that registry available all the time, then, as well as you want to use it for other things, then maybe an enterprise Quay deployment, multi-node enterprise Quay deployment is what you want, or Harbor, or Artifactory, or pick your poison, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's like DNS or DHCP or any of these other things, right? If you're using it, it needs to have the availability and resiliency in line with the availability and resiliency of the rest of the things that you're relying on.
Yeah, I think you're right. Well, you're definitely right about the mirror registry. I think I remember back in the day, it was something about like not being supported, but it does make sense. That would be it was only for OpenShift. That's what it was. So yeah.
Yep, and you can use, so if you have Platform Plus subscriptions, you can use, so that includes a Quay with that. You can deploy Quay to any Platform Plus cluster, and any Kubernetes, anything can use that registry. It doesn't have to be just that cluster. So Quay is the only one of the Platform Plus things that you can do that with. Because like, if you have Platform Plus and you deploy ACM, you can't connect an OCP or an OKE cluster into that ACM without that cluster having its own subscriptions. But Quay, you don't have to do that. Quay you can use, deploy it onto the Platform Plus cluster and connect whatever into it, and you're fine.
Yeah. So when you run, I just wanted to show you this bootstrap file, or I'm sorry, this ignition file. So one gets created for the workers, one gets created for the control plane, and then one gets created for the bootstrap. And so I'm statically assigning my IPs. And so what I'm doing is I'm basically just building this pointer file, and then as my virtual machines are getting spun up, right? So as the libvirt is spinning up, it's using CoreOS, and it's attaching this ignition file into CoreOS, and then that's it's setting up the networking. So it's setting up my hostname to be a statically assigned hostname, and then it's also setting up my network manager, my network connection. So I was just trying to play with this really quick with nobody watching, where it's to dump out the file, and but yeah, it's basically just setting up my interface, and yeah, here we go. Okay, I'm sorry.
While you're doing that, so two things. So one, so the person that I reached out to about Lucian's question about like why VMs aren't showing up in the machine set, the question I got back was, are you using static IPs for the compute nodes? But they also pointed out to me that, because I think they might be listening, when I was responding about having a virtual control plane with bare metal nodes, apparently that's in tech preview with 421. Where with vSphere, platform vSphere, you can have virtual control plane nodes with bare metal compute nodes in the cluster, which I did not know that. So
That is awesome.
yeah, so tech preview, right? Keep in mind the support implications there and stuff like that. Zach's asking some questions about Quay, and I think some of it is making it into, it looks like it might be a restream thing, because it's like catching up between what I see in the restream chat and what I see in the YouTube chat. Plan to use the Quay operator, but if I update to look at the Quay operator or the Quay deployment for images, it will open a dependency loop if I need to shut down that cluster, for example, during upgrades. So I think, so yes, that's a valid concern if you're trying to use the default integrated OpenShift registry, because there's only a single instance and it's generally configured not with shared storage or anything like that. You would expect with a Quay, so let's say I have a management cluster and I deploy Quay onto that cluster, it should have multiple instances. So it, you scale it to 3 replicas, and then you're using object storage or something like that, which also is replicated and provides, redundancy, so that if I upgrade my management cluster, when I cordon drain reboot one of the nodes, there's still the other 2 instances of Quay that are running that are responding back to those the things that it needs in order to perform those updates. I think there's also, I don't know if it's GA or tech preview, I don't know the status. I remember hearing a thing about a pinned image set, where basically you can say, here is a set of images, of container images, and I want to ensure that they're always present on these nodes. And then that's one way that I think is, I want to say it might be a tech preview or a dev preview thing, specifically with disconnected and this type of scenario where, like, hey, pull down these images, they're available on the node, so that when the node goes to do an update and a reboot, I don't have that external registry dependency.
Yeah, nice. Actually, I'm just waiting for this. Is going to take forever. I mean, it's so slow, but the idea here is that everything's moving along.
Yeah, and so I do have to drop in 6 minutes, just to warn everybody. Johnny already knows this, but just to warn everybody when I blip out. So why does this take so long? So there's a lot of things that are happening behind the scenes. But when you think about it, like, what are all of the things that are running on the control plane, right? There's etcd, there's the API server, there's, whatever the other set of workloads that comprise something like 80 different pods and other things happening inside of there.
Yeah.
But importantly, all of those services, they have to be ready. So what I mean by that is, like, I deploy etcd, all the nodes stand up, they all connect to each other and talk to each other, and then etcd says, okay, I'm ready. Well, that takes some time. The API server can't move forward until etcd says, okay, I'm ready. And then we instantiate multiple API servers that then have to talk to each other and say, all right, are we all here? Okay, the API service is ready to go. And then it moves forward. And then if we have to, eventually it gets to the point of machine config standing up and it applies some configuration. Maybe it applies an RCOS update or something like that. Well, then it has to reboot that node, which takes time. But when that node comes back, we have to wait for all of those services to stabilize, right? etcd on the node that went down has to catch back up, and everything stabilizes. And then it says, okay, everything's good, let me move to node 2. That's specific for control plane. But even with, during the install process, even with the compute nodes, remember the compute nodes are doing things like ingress controllers. And so, authentication authorization services, like all of those things, like when the ingress nodes blip, we have to wait for the other one to take over if there's only 2, which is the default config, right? We have to wait for the other one to take over and everything to reconverge on that, which can take a few seconds to a minute or 2. And then everything comes back and it says, okay, the other one is back, everything's synchronized, everything's stabilized. Now let's do the inverse and go through this process over again.
Yeah.
So it can definitely, that's what extends out this whole process, and why doing a cluster install can take 30 plus minutes sometimes.
Yeah, and if you're running on an old crappy Asus PN50 mini NUC kind of machine, where you're maxing out the CPU, it's even worse. So, but it is running, and it'll just take some time. But yeah, and even like depending on like how far we get with this, like if I were to apply the image data sets, right, or the image digest. For whatever reason, I can't think of the stupid name now, but the image digest again, and I update the catalog source. Those are MCP level changes, right? So what it's going to do is it's going to update the MCP. The MCP is going to go into an updating status. And just like you said, Sully, like one of the nodes, it's going to roll them out one at a time. It's going to update the node. The node's going to do its thing. It's going to bounce back up. It's going to check in. And as soon as it comes in and says it's healthy, it's going to roll the next one, and then until it finishes. So it can take time. If you're doing this in bare metal, now you've got memory tests. You've got like it can just take it can just seem like it's going to take forever.
Yeah, and you know we're on version 4.21 today. So over the last 21 releases, this has gotten better. So for example, now it's the various. I think the simplest way to describe this is there is awareness of nodes that have been updated and nodes that haven't. And so it will try and only disrupt the workload as little as possible. So, you know, the first node that boots, something's going to get disrupted. But then the next node that gets reboot, it tries to move the workload onto the node that has already been rebooted. So that way it doesn't that workload doesn't have to get disrupted again. As opposed to moving it to some other node where, you know, it's the fifth one out of 8. So the first node reboots, it moves it over to node 5. And then node 5 eventually gets rebooted, and now it gets disrupted a second time, and so on and so forth. So
yeah. And if you look over on the right part of the window here where it says the one of two members, this is exactly what Sully's talking about. Right? It's coming up, it's checking in. I'm at a certain version. I'm at a certain state. So it's like, all right, cool. I've got one of the two. I'm all set, and then it's starting to roll out the other ones. Yeah, and RHOP 9 with the image content source policy, there's a trust list, or there's like a file that gets generated once the mirroring is done that's got like these trust keys, which it kind of accounts for that the trust between the registry and the cluster. So yeah, I've never used it. I was looking it up. I was like, what is this file? And then I went and looked up what it is. I'm like, oh crap, that's cool, because before it was.
Jonny, what's the thing? We talked about it right after 4.21 was released. You talked about it in a top of mind, where there was images that weren't getting pulled, and it was some change in like
cryo, the short name. So
That's
before
right.
You could just have like HTTP. Now you actually have to fully qualify a container name, FQCN.
Okay, not the same thing. I was trying to remember that was a change in 4.21. I didn't know if it was related to what RHOP 9 was saying there.
Yeah, the signature thing, like I said, I'd never seen it before. And so even I think when we did the disconnected part 1 a year ago or 8 years ago, whenever we did it, I think that it was just the IDMS and the ITMS. And I think with 4.21 now you've got like the cluster config or the cluster catalog, and now this config map that's got the trust signatures in it. And yeah, I wish that there was more exciting things to talk about, but this is really what installing OpenShift is. Like especially on the UPI side, once you get all the bits worked out in the beginning, it's really just deploying and waiting. And then once you've got it, it's important though. I think the UPI deployment is really good, because when you go through and you build it all out and you know what it's like to go through each step, when you start troubleshooting or when you start having problems, now you know how to troubleshoot it, right? You can tell like almost immediately where the problem's at. If you're not even getting your initial bootstrap up, all right, it's most likely DNS, it's most likely networking, or it's most likely something to do with your install config, like you've got a credential, something like that. But it's like you immediately know where to go and look. Once you get past the bootstrap and you're deploying onto the cluster, it's like, okay, this could be a network config, but it helps isolating the problem a lot easier.
Yeah, it's the OpenShift install process. It's front loaded with all the information and everything. So like, as the administrator, as the person doing the deploying, I have to make sure that everything that it needs is configured and all the information is provided, and then it starts the install process. And for better or for worse, it's either all pass or all fail.
Mm-hmm.
So if something goes wrong, we troubleshoot it to figure out what went wrong so that we can fix it at the start, and then we repeat the process from the beginning. There's no like, oh, it made it to 70% and then this thing fails, let me fix that one thing, and then it restarts at 70% again. For better or for worse, it doesn't work that way with the OpenShift install process.
Yeah. So I don't know. Do we want to hang out until this thing finishes, or do we want to like have it ready and then pick up next week or whenever we come back and just do a quick recap on it? And like, what do you think?
I don't know. I just got a connection reconnecting into my session here, so I think I just blipped in and out. Completely up to you. I'll say I enjoy watching log files scroll by as much as anybody else. So I will. Let's give it another, say, 7 minutes. Turns out that I don't actually have to leave until 12:30, not 12:10 like I thought.
Okay, awesome.
So I've got another 17 minutes. So let's give it like another 7 minutes. We can chat through a couple of different things. If there's any questions from the audience here, please don't hesitate to ask those.
Yeah, if you're watching and there's anything you want me to show off, or if like you have a question about something, feel free to ask. I will send or I'll update the show notes with the link to the diagrams and to the gist with all the steps that I took, and then I'll also sanitize my repo and then also attach that. So if you wanted to run the scripts, you could give it a shot and kind of do your own thing.
Yeah. One of the things I wanted to touch on is the OpenShift install is always the same, right? At the lowest level, the level that it's working at, it's kind of always the same. Of that process that I described earlier of we have a bootstrap that instantiates a single node control plane and enough services that it can instantiate the rest of the control plane and hand over to it, and then it configures compute nodes and everything else. That is fundamentally the process across all of the different architectures and install methods and everything else. So how we get to that point is what changes with all the different install methods. So with IPI, the installer is doing that work for us for the infrastructure things. So when I do OpenShift install create cluster and I'm choosing, I'll pick on AWS or vSphere, right? The installer creates the bootstrap VM. It creates the control plane VMs. And then the control plane with the machine set creates the compute nodes. If it's UPI, user provision infrastructure, the human does those things. The human creates the bootstrap VM and tells it where its operating system is and where its config files are. The human creates the control plane nodes and installs our costs and tells it where to go for its stuff, so on and so forth, right? Non-integrated is basically the same. So we also have these other install experiences. So there's assisted installer, there's agent-based installer, there's zero-touch provisioning. What am I missing here, Jonny? Like, there's all of these different things that are all fundamentally the same install experience. It's how am I providing the information that it needs in order to do the install that changes.
Yeah. So
with assisted installer, right, I'm booting my nodes to that ISO that it gives me, right, which is a live RCOS more or less. And then they go and register with the assisted installer and basically wait for you to tell it what its configuration is. And so if you've been doing OpenShift installs for a very long time, like back in the early 4. single digit days, right, you would attach the RCOS ISO, you would boot the node, and then you would interrupt it at the kernel prompt, and you would tell it, like, here is where your kickstart file, or not kickstart, but your what is it, Jonny? Ignition files are, and here's where your API server and stuff like that is. Basically, it's doing that. It's booting enough of RCOS to go up and register and poke into the assisted installer interface and say, all right, tell me where all the things that I need are. Assisted installer happens to do a bunch of helpers as well. So like if you designate the node as in the interface, like, hey, you're a control plane node, it sends down a command to that node and says, hey, you're a control plane node, run an FIO test to check and see if the local storage is performant enough for etcd, right? Stuff like that. So you feed it all of its information, and then it's just the regular install process, just like it would be with any other thing. Agent-based is the same thing. The change is I'm taking all of that configuration information, so all this stuff that's in install config, all the stuff that's in the networking and all that, and you're packaging those files into the ISO that the node boots to, so that when the node boots, it says, oh, here's all of my information, and it just rolls forward and does its thing, right? We don't have to wait on that interruption. And then there's various other permutations that exist inside of there. So if you've been watching the What's New presentations, we've started talking about a thing called the OVE installer, which is a mashup of assisted installer and agent-based installer. And it's self-contained in the way that it does it. So if you, Jonny, if you are you logged into console.redhat.com?
I can be.
So the way that one works is it's a self-contained ISO. The ISO is like 40 or 50 gigabytes in size, fair warning. But when you boot your node to that ISO, it boots and then it asks, hey, what's my IP address? Or do you want me to use DHCP? And then it'll ask, what's my rendezvous host? The rendezvous host is the one that more or less your API I think it's the API load balancer points to. Yeah, so if you click OpenShift and then click Create Cluster. So whichever one has the rendezvous IP, once you boot that node, you browse to that node, and it's the assisted installer experience. So click on Open.
Channel platform, right?
Yeah, we want the data center. Yep, Create Cluster, data center, up at the top.
Oh, there. Yeah, I was like, oh.
And then run agent installer locally. And then, is that what I want? No, click back. Sorry.
No, you're good.
So yeah, assistant installer. So create cluster. Oh, there it is. So the little toggle that says I'm installing in a disconnected /air-gapped/secured environment. So if you click that toggle and then click next, this is where you get that, whatever it says, 43.5 gigabyte ISO. So if you download this and you boot your node to it, you give it an IP address, you tell it where the rendezvous IP is, you let it finish booting, you browse to the rendezvous IP, and you get the assisted installer experience running off of that node. Any other nodes that get booted and pointed at that rendezvous IP register in the interface, just like with assisted installer. You tell it what it is and who it is and all those other things. You click install, and it installs just like assisted installer, but remember, it's self-contained. So each node uses the ISO to grab the container images that it needs to finish booting the cluster and installing the cluster. So I don't have an external registry dependency there. So it's a really cool experience in that regard. I really like that experience and making it easier and simpler, and we don't have to worry about mirror registries and all these other stuff.
Yeah.
I had a long conversation and a presentation with Mahal, the product manager for that yesterday. There's a really cool roadmap of things for that that we should definitely bring them on and chat about it. Yeah, lots of really interesting stuff that's happening there.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm going to give that a shot as soon as we're done here. Like, that is awesome. It is 40 gigs, by the way. It's 40.4 gigs.
Yeah. So the reason why it's so large is because so that ISO contains a bunch of, I think it's 10 or 12 operators out of the box.
Yeah.
The reason why you hear us refer to it as the OVE installer, because it contains all of the virtualization operators. So it has the OpenShift virtualization CNV operator, it has NM state, it has self-node remediation, fence agent remediation, node health check, all of those things inside of there. Yeah, there's the list.
Yeah. OpenShift Vert. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, so catching up on chat here. So Lucian, how does OpenShift ensure you are using a license in an air-gapped environment? It doesn't. So I think the best way to describe it is the cluster itself has no awareness of its subscription status or subscription type. So you can go in, you can click the button that says assign it to a subscription and all that other stuff, and it kind of says like, hey, great, I'm subscribed, and then it quits yelling at you about it, type of thing. So I'll caveat this by saying like this is like second and third hand information that I have from interacting with the subscription team and all that. I actually have a call with them this afternoon to talk about a very related topic. Anyways, so what happens is with a connected cluster, it sends telemetry back to Red Hat, and then there's the subscription watch service says, okay, this cluster has these nodes, these compute nodes that consume X number of subscriptions. This subscription has X, or this subscription pool has X number of nodes available, so everything's good, everything's kosher, you're amazing. In a disconnected environment, of course, none of that information can come back. So we tell the cluster, hey, you have a subscription, and it says, great, thank you. And then on the connected side, you go in and you say, this subscription or this cluster is associated with this subscription, so that when you open a support case and our support folks are helping you with the cluster, and they look at that cluster identifier, and they're looking at the support subscriptions, they can say, oh, look, these things match. Yes, this appears to be good. So that's how they do that verification. Importantly, the cluster has no idea what subscription edition you're using. And the reason why I say that's important is because we, as the administrators, we have to be careful if we're using, for example, OpenShift Kubernetes engine, OKE, because the cluster doesn't stop you from deploying an OCP feature. And so you kind of have to be just, again, careful about that, because at some point, theoretically, somebody could come to you and say, hey, you are subscribed with OKE. Let's verify that. Let's verify that you're using the product appropriately. So just be aware of those things. There is some help, Johnny. I don't know if do you have a running cluster?
I'm doing it right now. Let's see.
So, well, what I was going to say, if you have a running cluster, one of the things that can help you avoid that accidentally using features that you're not supposed to is in the operator hub, in the catalog there, there's a filter box that'll tell you which, or you can limit it to just which editions. Because the operators themselves in their metadata declare which OpenShift editions they are assigned to or associated with.
All right, so you're saying, do I need to go in the UI?
Yeah.
Okay, oh, then let me stop being stupid here for just a second. I don't even know if I can help it. That's just, I'm naturally just, all right, let's see.
Lucian, for now, I installed a proof of concept with a lot of operators. Everything's working. License only support and security updates. Technically, if you're using OpenShift without a subscription, you are violating the terms of service. So it's not just for support. Like, I can deploy OpenShift, and so long as I never pick up the phone and call Red Hat, I'm good. It is violating the TOS of the license if you're doing that.
All right, so come on, little buddy.
The new
Bam.
OpenShift experience. So go to sorry, it's small.
Oh,
Ecosystem in the left-hand menu, and then software catalog. And then if you scroll down in there, in that left-hand column, the one that's a bunch of little lines, keep scrolling, keep going, keep going. Well, it just made a liar out of it. Maybe it's at the top. Anyways, there is supposed to be a filter here based off of which edition the operator works with. Do I have?
which edition the operator works? Oh, you mean like which
Or which one it's associated with?
operators? No, that's just gonna be. Oh wait.
Did we change that? Has something?
Here you go. Valid subscription. So you actually have to select other.
Oh.
You click on other, and then it's a sub menu. So if you go there, then you can do like,
yeah,
OpenShift container platform, who's who, what's it, and then virtualization. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. So essentially, like, if my cluster is subscribed using OKE, I only want to check the valid subscription thing for OKE there. So that way I don't accidentally use a operator that is not supposed to be used with OKE. So for example, pipelines, right? Pipelines is an OCP feature, so it should not be in this list.
Right.
But the cluster won't prevent you from installing that. Again, it's a compliance thing, and theoretically, whoever goes and audits these things could come and say like, hey, you are not using this correctly. Please pay us for the usage that you're using appropriately.
That's awesome. I didn't even know that you could do that, to be honest. So yeah, just if you're wondering, so you go to ecosystem, software catalog, all items, you click on other, and then beneath that, there's another submenu that pops up, and yeah, then that's where you can go and filter off of almost said subscriptions. And then if you have a cluster, oh, there you go. Let me see if I can find this command. I just had the command to to get your UUID for the cluster. Let's see here. Yeah. So then if you have a disconnected cluster, what you would do is you would go and get this UUID, and then you would take it, and then you'd go to console and share this tab instead. Oh my God. Tell me, could you guys see that? All right. So my God. So I ran this command, OCGet cluster version -o JSON path, and then I'm grabbing out the cluster ID.
Yep.
And then I'm copying.
It's also in the UI right on the landing.
Yeah. I was just trying to do it from the shell because I never used the UI, but yeah. So then you go in here and then you plug it in, and then you give it your name, and then you attach your subscription and stuff to it that way. So that way you've at least got your mapping done, or like Sully was saying, you've at least registered your node, and you say, hey, this is the subscription that's associated with this machine. And then the other part of this is if you go into, it's up here. It's here. If you go to home, it's actually way easier to get it from the UI.
So Zach, to answer your question, so is there a way for the software catalog to default to that filter for the subscription type? So today, no. And there's quite a bit of debate within the product team about that. So the thought process is, how many folks running a production OpenShift cluster allow the operator catalog to just be effectively a free-for-all or the wild, wild west? Right. The thought process or the justification that we give to ourselves is, well, we think that customers should be creating effectively their own filtered operator catalog that has specific versions in it. So, because if you go to the full catalog, right, there's 812 different operators inside of there that all have their own versions and version history and all of these other things. And the application teams, in theory, want to be controlling the precise operators and operator versions that they're using inside of there. And so therefore, if I know that I'm only using a OCP, right, for example, cluster, so I don't need anything that's Platform Plus related, I create a catalog mirror or a customized catalog that has only the operators that I need, and then I configure that inside of my cluster so that it's only seeing those other things don't show up. It has no knowledge of them. It's just those things that are inside of there. And it's also a version control thing so that my security team has reviewed, that the MariaDB operator version 123 is approved. My network team has approved that, I don't know, F5 version, operator version, XYZ is approved, blah, 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 like that type of stuff. I don't know whether or not that's valid. I do know that there has been quite a few requests from folks of kind of exactly what you're asking for, Zach, which is like, hey, at a minimum, like just give us the option to pre-filter those things, or give the administrator the option to hide operators, not even like at the subscription type, but just in general, like, hey, don't ever show, I don't know, the OpenShift virtualization operator, right? It doesn't matter what edition, doesn't matter what platform type, doesn't like any of those things. Don't ever show the OpenShift virtualization, operator. But none of that has come to fruition yet.
Yeah, so I was just telling here, Sully, that the bootstrap actually it completed. This is what you want to see. So once this is done, now what we can do is we can actually kill this machine.
Jonny, it only took 7.1 seconds.
That's it. Yeah, I mean, I don't know why I'm so impatient. I just I just like to hear you talk. Let's see. Yeah, so now that the bootstrap's done, basically we're just waiting for the API to come up on our actual cluster. And then, yeah, I mean, like, that's pretty much it. Like we can apply the IDMS and the ITMS and stuff like that. And that's really all I was going to show you is just, hey, we can install the packages. And then I was going to, the problem is that it'll take another few minutes to bounce the nodes. But just high levels of confidence that this is going to work. And what I can do is update the gist with all the things that you can go back in and check yourself. So Zach, one thing that you'll see, I can't do it here because I don't have the catalog installed, but when you pull in certain operators, when you do an OC get like package manifest or you're looking in the catalog, because you've got a specific catalog with the operators that you've defined in your image set config, that's all that you'll see. So like in my case, I'll only see the local storage operator and the compliance operator. But if I had like OpenShift virtualization, OpenShift GitOps, pipelines, compliance, those would be the only ones that I would see. So it's not easy, like through the GUI, like Andrew's talking about, but like it is a way that you can control the what visibility your users have from an operator perspective through the catalog. But it's kind of gross doing it on your own. Like it's actually really gross to do it on your own.
I have no comment to add to that, Jonny.
I want to be positive, but it's like if you've ever done it, like like it's hard and
it's gotten better. But yeah, it's like it used to be. I haven't looked at it in a while, but it used to be like, oh, you want to get a filter. If you don't have a running cluster already, where you can go in and see the list of operators, you have to like pull down a container image and then basically do a like XML RPC extract type of thing to get the list out of it. And
yeah,
it was rough. I don't know if that has gotten substantially better over the years, but
well, OC Mirror does it all for you. So which I mean, I guess that's the upside, but
yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, before then, yeah, trying to do the gRPC stuff and the XML parsing, it was just the worst. And from a human in the loop perspective, like that was if I messed anything up consistently, it was that just trying to get the catalog built correctly. And yeah, it used to make me so mad.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I feel like that's pretty much it. The rest of it's just installing stuff in OpenShift like we normally do. Pretty straightforward. Once you get all the bits put together, it's really just a waiting game and getting it deployed.
Yep. I will say, I'll point out. So the one pseudo difference in all of those install processes that I was pointing out before is hosted control planes.
Oh yeah.
Because hosted control planes, instead of having to instantiate, 1, 3, 4, or 5 discrete control plane nodes, and then kind of let everything come up and do its thing inside of there. It's already have an OpenShift cluster running. The new control plane is just pod-based workload inside of there. So it's like literally instantiate a pod, and oh look, there's 3 etcd pods. Oh look, they talk to each other. It takes only a few seconds to get all those things up and running. So most of the wait time there is waiting on the node pools or pools to instantiate whatever node, and then waiting for the things that need to run on compute nodes like ingress controllers to start up. So whereas the traditional install method can take, depending on a number of factors, anywhere from like 25-30 minutes up to about an hour, hosted control planes is more like, depending on things, mostly storage and how quickly you can pull container images, like 5 to 12 minutes, 5 to 15 minutes maybe. It's dramatically faster, because so much, and to Jonny's point, like so much of the install process is the control plane and safely instantiating all of those services and scaling them out. And then as things update versions and change configuration that require restarting of services and all that other stuff, it just takes time. Whereas with hosted control planes, it's all the control plane things are just faster.
Yeah. Yeah, so I'm just showing off like this hosted control, this hosted cluster resource, right? So I'm saying get hosted cluster in the clusters namespace, and you can see all the clusters that we have. And if I look in the primary, just kidding. Oh, just kidding. Pods. What this is, this clusters dash primary, this is all of my control plane pods, right? So this is everything that my control plane nodes would spin up. You can see I've got 3 etcds. I've got my API servers, my OAuth stuff, route controller, everything is in this namespace. And then what that does is it creates a node pool, and it's just associating like the nodes in the AWS. So I provision a node per availability zone in each region. And so that's where like you'll see in 1B, there's only 2 availability zones. So my cluster's got 1 node in each one. And then my secondary cluster, it's got 1 across each zone in US West 2. But yeah, it's pretty cool. And then since this is integrated with AWS, I don't know if my normal account will be able to do this. Yeah, you'll be able to see all the AWS machines. So it actually, part of the spin up of the cluster is it creates this AWS machine. And so now you've got like this, the scope of like resources that get configured. So you create the hosted cluster, your pods control plane gets stood up, your AWS machine resource gets spun up along with your node pools, and then that's your compute infrastructure. But if I were to do like a host to get nodes from here, all I see is my 2 workers. I don't see any control plane nodes. I can't actually see my control plane. So I've actually got a physical separation of resources. So control planes and a hosted cluster in US East 2, and then these nodes are in like, I think West 1. So it's pretty cool. And it only took 15 minutes to spin the whole thing up, which was awesome.
Yeah. Yep. Okay, I really do need to drop now, so I'll let I will leave the closeout in your capable hands, Jonny.
Cool. Yeah, man. Well, hey, good luck, and yeah, I'll talk to you, I'm sure, probably tonight or tomorrow.
Yeah, chat soon. Thanks,
right,
y'all.
see you, man.
And as always, don't hesitate to reach out to me or Jonny if you have any questions, whether it's live here or if you're watching us after the fact. So, all right, Jonny, good luck.
Yep, thanks, man.
Now I got to make sure not to click the button that says "in stream" here. In the
Yeah, right. My bad. I'm sorry. All right, later, man.
Yeah. Bye.
All right, so I'm not going to go through the rest of the install. That's the gist is it's going to install. Then we would apply the IDMSs or the ITMS, those type of things, and then just show the operators. But yeah, for the sake of everybody's sanity and time, because who knows how long this thing's going to take, just trust that it's going to work. And like I said, I will create a gist with all the commands, and then I'll scrub my repo and make sure I don't have anything personal in there, and then I'll share that out as well. So that way, if you want to run the bash scripts, you can, or if you want to run the Ansible scripts, you definitely can. But yeah, and if you have any problems or if you have any questions, just let me know. The mirroring for me took about an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours to pull down, the 50 or 60 gigs, whatever it was. And then, yeah, the rest of it was just tinkering with the core OS bits to make sure I got the ignition files in the right place and stuff like that when they're loading up. But other than that, it really wasn't that bad. It's just I'm prone to typo, and so that's why I wanted the automation for the virtual machines, because if I'm trying to hand jam the XML, it's not going to be good for anybody, and I don't know if we would have actually had a successful anything. So yeah, hopefully you guys learned a lot. Hopefully you got a lot out of it. Hopefully it provided some insight into if you have any questions about it, hopefully it helps you get to the answer. One thing before we go, I do want to talk about the schedule coming up. So next week is KubeCon EU in Amsterdam. If you're going to be there, I will also be there. So stop by. I'll be at OpenShift Commons. I'm doing the keynote for Commons on Monday. So if you're going to be there, stop by. I'd love to say hi and chat with you for a little bit. After that, we have I don't know so last week we had Jonathan Gershotter come on with part of his team. Another part of his team is going to come on and do a 2-part series on migrating VMware workloads into OpenShift. So it's going to be 2 different teams, but they're going to be talking about different aspects of it. So it's really like the first part's getting a VMware workload into OpenShift, and then the next part's going to be like just extending those the different types of workloads that you can have. And then in April, we're still trying to figure it out, but it's getting into summit season. So I think Sully and I we've been talking a lot about doing a lot of these recap type of sessions where, getting back to the basics, redoing the fundamentals, and making sure that we've got like the core foundation for some of these, OpenShifty type of things, like the, installations and upgrades and stuff like that. And Adam, I think we did an episode on the compliance operator a year ago, maybe a year and some change ago. It's time, so I'll reach out to that team and have them come back on. I think it's been about 6 months or so, I think, until we've had, I think it's been about 6 months since we've had the ACS team on too. So I think it was like Sean Rickard, no relation. He was on and did some cool stuff with ACS. So yeah, no, you're absolutely right. The compliance operator would be cool, especially like a full demo, making sure that you've got like all your STIG and whatever compliance stuff that you have to do. That's a good idea, and I'll reach out to the team and see if we can't get them on. Let's see. Yeah, and also if you have any ideas, like so Adam, great point about the compliance operator. If there's any other ideas or any streams that you'd like to see, or if there's there's some configuration or something that you've heard about or whatever, and you want to see it done, or you want us to talk crap about it, hit us up and let us know, and we'll try and get it booked, because we're always looking for ideas, and it's hard to come up with new things, and yeah, we're always looking for stuff. So yeah, appreciate it. And then finally, just because we kind of jumped into AI talk and we didn't really get to the top of mind, if you follow Argo community at all, they had a release candidate drop today or yesterday. It's 3.4. They're doing a lot of stuff with their hydrator. There's a lot of stuff in the UI. There's actually one thing where you can start filtering in the UI by annotations. So that's pretty cool. And then there's just some more UI type things that you can do that are they're nice enhancements. So the blog announcement is here. And then finally, the last top of mind thing is the Kyverno project, which is a policy orchestrator for Kubernetes. They just graduated to, or I guess they just graduated, whatever it is, whatever the top tier of the CNCF is. They're a graduated project, I think is the way you're supposed to say it. That just dropped. So congratulations to Kyverno. That would be another good stream actually, is to do some Kyverno stuff and actually like policy management and orchestration. That'd be kind of cool. Yeah, that's it. I'm just rambling at this point. If there's any final questions, let's try and get them in. Again, any ideas for streams, or if you have questions that you don't want to ask live, if you're watching this after the fact and you've got a question, hit me up. If you don't see anything in the show notes about repos, that's because I am easily distracted and I forgot. So just hit me up and remind me that I need to get off my butt and do this, and I will knock it out. Yeah. Hopefully everybody got something out of today. Hopefully I didn't ramble on too much and make it worse. Yeah, so cool. Until then, I will see most of you. Let's see. Okay. Yes, here we go. I got distracted. See, ODF in a disconnected environment. All right, Zach, I'll take a look at that. I know that I can't remember the last time we've done ODF. It's been a while for sure. I'll take a look at ODF and see what we can do. And yes, I talked to Sean a week ago, and he's looking for putting up a new demo to come in and talk about ACS. So, yeah, ODF it's just think about it as network storage. Yeah, you're right. Local storage is going to be all local disks and stuff like that. ODF is going to be like your Portworx type of deal, where it's a centralized management for cluster storage. Yes, and I don't know when ACM 216 is going to drop. I think it's soon. I thought it was supposed to be the first part of March, but I don't know if it got pushed or not. So I'd have to check that out. And that would be like Scott and Brad to come back on. So awesome, cool. I appreciate it. Thanks for the nice words there, Zach. Yeah, I'm glad you learned a lot. And again, if you have any questions, my email stream, my thought to email stream is a little bit less, all over the place than my thought to voice. So. Yeah, if you have any questions, feel free to ask, and I'll try and help out. Again, we're out next week. We're back April 1st with the VMware migration to OpenShift. So until then, have a good one, and I appreciate you.